Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive, the podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside. Let's dive in. What if the very idea that you become meaningful by taking ever more responsibility isn't just incomplete, but is actually designed to keep you willingly chained inside the system you think you're mastering?
That is a heavy question to start with,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess that's exactly why we're here.
It's the whole point.
So today we're looking at a piece of content that, well, on the surface, it looks like the ultimate guide to getting your life together. We're diving into a synthesis of a massive conversation. It's about an hour and a half long between Jordan Peterson and Aubrey Marcus.
Two absolute heavyweights in the, let's call it the modern sense-making space.
Exactly. And the topics they cover are just huge. We're talking psychological renewal, truth, myth, even divine destiny. It's the kind of conversation that, millions of people listen to and think, finally, someone is giving me a map.
This is it.
This is how I fix myself. This is how I find purpose in a world that feels completely chaotic. And I have to say, listening to the source material, it's compelling. It really is. It makes you want to sit up straighter.
Oh, it's designed to be compelling. That's the nature of the track.
And see, that's exactly where we're going today. We aren't just summarizing their advice on how to be a better person. We are applying a very specific filter to it, a source document that analyzes this exact conversation, not as self-help, but as a containment system.
This is where you need to put your skepticism hat on and put it on tight. Because the source material we're working with, it argues that this entire discourse, the whole Peterson brand of pick up your cross and bear it, and the Aubrey Marcus brand of optimize your life, is actually a sophisticated psychological mechanism.
Okay, a mechanism. How?
It identifies a central loop, a feedback loop, and it goes like this. Responsibility leads to a feeling of meaning, which in turn leads to a need for perpetual self-correction.
Okay, but I have to stop you there. Because to the average listener, and to be honest, to me, that loop sounds good. It sounds healthy.
Of course it does.
Responsibility leads to meaning. I mean, that's basically the definition of adulthood, isn't it? If we don't take responsibility for things, aren't we just, children?
It sounds like adulthood to the prisoner.
Right.
And that is the absolute crux of the argument we're exploring today. The source we're using, it defines this loop not as growth, but as a reincarnation lure.
A reincarnation lure. That sounds incredibly sci-fi. Can we ground that a bit?
Let's ground it. Think about a video game, a really addictive one. You finish a level, and the game says, great job, here's a harder level with better rewards. You feel good, right? You achieve something, so you dive into the next level, you're progressing.
Right, you're getting better, you're leveling up.
But are you leaving the game?
No, you're just getting deeper into the game.
Right. Exactly. So the argument is that this advice, Peterson's advice in particular, functions to tether your consciousness to the game. It tethers you to what the source calls iterative self-optimization within hierarchical realities.
That is a mouthful.
It's a fancy way of saying it keeps you on the hamster wheel. But, and this is the absolute genius of the trap, it paints the hamster wheel gold. It convinces you that running on the wheel is a noble burden.
A heroic act, even.
A heroic act. It convinces you that the wheel needs you to turn it, that your suffering has a grand purpose within the system.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, the critique is that by focusing so intensely on fixing ourselves, on cleaning our rooms, on carrying the heaviest load we can possibly find, we are, in effect, being neutralized.
Precisely. You become so busy polishing the bars of your cage that you never even think to look for the key. In fact, you become proud of how shiny your particular bars are. You start looking over at the next cell and lecturing other prisoners on the sorry state of their bars.
Our source material, the analysis, it breaks this down even further. It talks about an eagle eye analysis that isolates several core concepts. These are like the structural bolts of this cage.
Exactly. And these concepts range from things we just accept as axioms, basic truths we don't even question, all the way to these reincarnation lures you mentioned.
And the function of these concepts, according to this deconstruction, is to harvest energy. Now, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. What does that mean?
Harvest energy. Yeah, it sounds like something out of the Matrix. Think of it less physically and more psychologically. It works through self-judgment cycles.
Okay.
If the system can get you to constantly judge yourself, to constantly feel like you aren't doing enough, that you're not responsible enough, you generate a tremendous amount of internal emotional energy.
Like anxiety, guilt.
Anxiety, guilt, determination, shame, all of it. You turn all that energy inward. You don't look at the prison walls and think about burning them down. You look at your own reflection and try to become the best prisoner possible.
It's interesting because Peterson often talks about the danger of nihilism, right? The danger of staring into the abyss, into the void, and finding nothing there.
Right, that's his great fear.
And there's a quote from the source analysis that really struck me on this point. It says, this discourse offers meaning as a bribe. It effectively says, here, take this sense of purpose so you don't stare too long into the void.
Because if you stared into the void for long enough, you might realize that the system itself is illegitimate. You might see that the game is rigged. So they hand you a mop and a bucket and say, cleaning this specific patch of floor is your divine destiny.
And you say, thank you. I feel so much better now that I have a job.
It's brilliant. The system is absolutely terrified of the void, so it fills it with duty.
But surely some duty is real, right? I mean, this can't be a blanket statement. If I'm a parent, I have a duty to my child. If I'm a doctor, I have a duty to my patient. Is the source saying that all responsibility is a trap?
That is a crucial distinction, you're right. The source isn't arguing against care or love. It's arguing against structural submission disguised as morality.
Okay, can you unpack that a little?
It's about where the responsibility is directed. Is it directed toward another living being, toward love, toward a direct, tangible experience? Or is it directed toward upholding a societal structure that creates the suffering in the first place?
Ah, I see.
The argument is that Peterson deliberately blurs that line. He makes paying your taxes on time and being a good, compliant employee feel as morally significant as saving your father from the belly of the whale. He elevates bureaucratic compliance to the level of mythic heroism.
That's a subtle, but yeah, a potentially dangerous blend. Let's get into the specifics of how this machinery works, because when you listen to Peterson, it really doesn't sound like he's trying to trick you. It sounds empowering.
That's the lure part. It has to feel good to work. If the trap hurt immediately, you'd never step in it.
Okay, let's talk about what the analysis calls the heaviest emotional hook, the weaponization of guilt and atonement. And it all centers on one specific story that Peterson absolutely loves to tell.
The Solzhenitsyn story. This is the absolute bedrock of his entire philosophy.
Right, for anyone who might not know, Alexander Solzhenitsyn was a prisoner in the Soviet gulags. We're talking about a horrific, totalitarian nightmare. Freezing cold, starvation, guards who could kill you for just looking at them the wrong way.
Yep.
Millions and millions of people died.
A literal hell on earth, no hyperbole.
And Peterson cites Solzhenitsyn's process of reviewing his own life while he was in that camp. He says Solzhenitsyn sat there in that frozen hell and went over his entire life with a fine-tooth comb.
And asked himself the killer question, what did I do to contribute to this catastrophe?
Right. Is there something I can do now to atone? Did I commit some sin in my past? Maybe I told a lie. Maybe I was arrogant.
Right.
That tilted the entire world just enough to create this gulag that I'm now suffering in.
Okay, let's just pause and unpack this slowly. Because on the surface, this looks like the ultimate form of stoicism. It's extreme ownership. I am responsible for my own reality. It's almost heroic.
It is heroic. That's why people love it so much. It gives him a sense of agency in a situation where he had absolutely none. Instead of just being a passive victim of the state, he becomes an active moral agent.
But our source deconstructs this as an emotional lever, specifically a guilt sabotage. Just think about the logic of it for a second. Really think. You are in a frozen wasteland because a paranoid dictator wants to crush all dissent. And the wisdom being offered to you is, how is this my fault?
When you put it that baldly, it sounds a lot like victim blaming.
It's the ultimate form of gaslighting. It links an unattainable goal changing the world to infinite self-blame. By making you believe that you are somehow personally responsible for the catastrophe of society, the system ensures you spend all your energy on self-flagellation.
So he's sitting there dissecting his own past behaviors. I was rude to my mother once. I lied to my boss about being sick, instead of looking at the guard tower and the machine guns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He is looking at his own soul with a microscope instead of looking at the rifle pointing at his head. If you can convince an entire population that the corruption of the state is just a scaled-up manifestation of their own personal, private sins, they will never, ever revolt. They will just pray harder and try to be better people.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. Peterson's whole point is that by fixing himself, Solzhenitsyn did gain the moral and spiritual strength to write The Gulag Archipelago, a book that eventually helped bring down the entire Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So didn't it work? Wasn't that the ultimate rebellion?
That is the narrative outcome, yes.
Right.
But the source argues that's the exception being used to justify the rule for the masses. It's the survivor bias. For every one Solzhenitsyn who writes a world-changing masterpiece, there are a million others who just internalized all that guilt and died thinking they probably deserved it. The system uses Solzhenitsyn as its poster child. See, if you just take enough personal responsibility, you too can change the world. It's a lottery ticket. The mechanism effectively tells you, if you are suffering, it's because you haven't cleaned your room thoroughly enough yet.
It completely personalizes systemic failure. It takes it off the hook.
It creates a safety valve for the status quo. You become the system's greatest asset. You police yourself. The source argues that this particular form of atonement is a harvesting mechanism. It literally feeds on your regret. It tells you that if you just suffer enough, if you just find enough of your own sins, you can redeem the world. But you can't. The gulag isn't there because you lied to your mom when you were 12. The gulag is there because of power dynamics. But Peterson's narrative hides those power dynamics behind a thick veil of personal morality.
It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry. And speaking of carrying burdens and finding these sins, let's look at the specific mechanism Peterson suggests for finding them. This leads us right into the section on prayer.
Yes. What the source calls the submission protocol.
Peterson gives this very specific, very practical advice to Marcus. He says, if you want an answer, if you want to orient yourself properly in the world, you sit on the edge of your bed.
I can just hear his voice saying it. Sit on the edge of your bed. He always emphasizes the physical posture. Head bowed, submissive.
And you ask yourself a very specific question. You don't ask, what do I truly want? Or how can I get free? You ask, what foolish thing am I doing that is making my life worse?
And he claims, with total certainty, you'll get an answer right now, and it won't be the one you want, but it will be the truth.
Now, it's framed as humility. It's framed as listening to your conscience or to God. So why does our source call this frequency sabotage?
Just look at the framing of the question itself. What foolish thing am I doing? The entire premise of the prayer is I am a fool. The premise is I am fundamentally wrong.
It presupposes guilt from the outset.
It absolutely presupposes that your natural state is error. It induces what the source calls a surrender to narrative authority. You are opening yourself up to a voice which Peterson might call conscience or God, but our source would argue is just the internalized programming of society, and you are literally asking that voice to scold you.
Harvesting via external wisdom dependency. That's the exact phrase in the document.
You are outsourcing your sovereignty. You are sitting there vulnerable, literally begging to be told what you're doing wrong. It creates an equation in your mind. Wisdom equals pain. If the answer hurts, it must be true. Oh, stop eating sugar. Oh, you need to apologize to your brother. Oh, you need to work harder. It's always, always an instruction to conform.
But let's push back on that, though. Isn't it true that we often are doing foolish things if I'm drinking too much or procrastinating on my work or being unnecessarily mean to my partner? Isn't it actually valuable to have a quiet moment where I admit that to myself?
Valuable for correction, yes, of course, but is it the path to liberation? That's the real question. The source isn't saying that self-reflection is bad. It's saying that this specific form of self-reflection is designed to lower your status. It keeps you in the posture of a child asking a parent for forgiveness forever.
The source contrasts this with some what it calls heretical systems. It mentions Gnosticism and chaos magic. We'll get deeper into those later, but just briefly, how do they handle this kind of thing differently?
Well, in Gnosticism, you would never ask the demiurge, the flawed lesser god who created this flawed material world, for advice on how to be a better servant in his factory. You realize the whole game is rigged. You don't sit on the bed and ask, how can I fit in better? You ask, how the hell do I get out?
And chaos magic.
Chaos magic is all about manifesting your intent. It's about asserting your will upon reality. It's not about begging for scraps of wisdom. It's not, please show me where I'm bad. It's, I intend to change this aspect of my reality. Peterson's method lowers your frequency into guilt and submission. It is designed to keep you small. It keeps you correcting yourself endlessly without ever graduating.
It's a complete inversion of how we usually hear this advice. Usually, sit on your bed and ask for the truth is presented as the very height of spiritual wisdom.
It is wisdom if your ultimate goal is to be a well-behaved cog in the machine, if your goal is to be a compliant citizen who cleans their room and pays their taxes and feels vaguely guilty about their own existence, it's perfect advice. But if your goal is sovereignty, it's a trap.
Let's move from the practice to the theory, the stories they use. Because Peterson is an absolute master of myth. He weaves these narratives that feel timeless, that feel like they're baked into our DNA. But the source calls this mythological bafflement.
Bafflement. I love that term. It means confusing you with something that sounds so profound you're afraid to question it.
Let's talk about Aladdin. This popped up in the source analysis as a key node of control.
Ah, the genie.
Right. Peterson uses the story of the genie to explain why we need constraints, why we need rules. He says the genie has phenomenal cosmic power, but lives in an itty-bitty living space, the lamp.
Right. And his argument is that without the lamp, the genie is just, what? A diffuse, useless cloud of energy?
That's the argument. He says you need limitations, you need mortality, you need rules, you need the tiny living space to have any value or any definition at all. If you were just infinite potential, you couldn't actually do anything.
This is a classic philosophical argument, right? Structure creates freedom. But the source we're analyzing identifies this as a story anchoring illusion.
What's the illusion part? Where's the trick?
The illusion is that the lamp is your friend. Peterson uses this metaphor to convince you that the tiny living space, which in this analogy is the system, the matrix, the societal rules, your 9-to-5 job, your mortgage, is necessary for your power to even exist.
Yep.
He's making a case for the necessity of the prison.
He's basically saying, hey, don't you want to be powerful like the genie? Then you better get back in your lamp because that's where your power comes from.
Exactly. Get back in your box. That's where all your magic comes from. It's a trick. The source argues this oversimplifies existential traps. It convinces you that you are fundamentally small and that your smallness is actually a feature, not a bug. It prevents you from ever asking the most dangerous question.
Which is?
What happens if I smash the lamp?
What it does happen if you smash the lamp.
Well, according to Peterson's logic, you lose your definition. You dissolve into useless chaos. But according to the heretical view, you become God. You become unconstrained consciousness. But the system, and Peterson acts as the system's high priest here, cannot allow you to realize that. So it sells you the romance of the lamp.
It anchors a philosophical truth in a piece of fiction. And because it's true in the movie Aladdin, we sort of implicitly accept it as true in our own reality.
Precisely. It's narrative authority. Look, it happens in the Disney movie. It must be a cosmic law. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud, but on an emotional level, it hooks you. We love the genie. We accept the genie's rules without thinking.
And speaking of Disney, we have to talk about Pinocchio. This is a huge, huge part of the Peterson-Marcus dialogue.
The puppet who just wants to be a real boy.
Peterson absolutely loves the character of Jiminy Cricket, the conscience, the little voice that tells you what you should do. And he contrasts this with Pleasure Island.
Oh, Pleasure Island, the terrifying place where the bad boys go to smoke cigars and play pool and break windows and eventually turn into donkeys.
And Peterson frames this as the eternal battle between the devil and Christ that exists inside every one of us. There's the part of you that wants to go to Pleasure Island and be a donkey impulsive, pleasure-seeking, chasing instant gratification. And then there's the part of you that wants to be real, responsible, burdened, bearing your cross.
This is what the source calls the duality projection.
Explain that term. What's being projected?
The source argues that by splitting the self into these convenient avatars, the good conscience and the bad impulsive shadowed, the system sustains a state of permanent internal conflict. You are at war with yourself.
Split yourself into avatars and let them fight. That's almost a direct quote from our breakdown document.
It is. And just think about the strategy there. If you are busy refereeing a boxing match inside your own head between Jiminy Cricket and the donkey, what are you not doing?
You aren't looking outside. You aren't questioning who the puppet master is.
You aren't fighting the hierarchy. You aren't questioning the rules of the game itself. You're too busy trying to suppress your own donkey nature. The source calls Pleasure Island a false salvation setup. It uses the fear of turning into a donkey, the fear of being useless or stupid or addicted, to force you into the noble burden of labor.
So Pleasure Island is essentially a scare tactic.
It's a boogeyman. Work hard, take responsibility, pay your mortgage on time, or you'll turn into a braying jackass and get sold to the salt mines. It presents a completely false dichotomy. Option A, slavery to the system, which is framed as becoming a real boy who works. Or option B, utter degeneracy, becoming a donkey.
And it completely inconveniently ignores option C.
What is option C?
Well, I suppose option C is being a free being who neither serves the system nor wallows in unconscious impulsive behavior.
Exactly. Option C is sovereignty. Option C is waking up and realizing you don't need to be a real boy, defined by Geppetto, and you don't need to be a donkey defined by the coachman. You can just leave the movie. But Peterson never, ever offers option C. It's always carry the cross or be a donkey.
It's a very effective binary. Because nobody wants to be the donkey. I certainly don't.
No one wants to be the donkey. So we willingly pick up the heavy load. We willingly step into the harness, and we call it meaning. We tell ourselves, I am suffering for a cause, therefore I am not a donkey.
Which brings us to how we measure that load. And this is the section of the analysis on the mathematics of the prison.
I love this part because it shows how they use cold, hard logic to bind you. It's not just about myths and stories, it's about math.
Peterson does this quick back-the-napkin calculation for Marcus. It's all about efficiency. He says, imagine you spend just 45 minutes a night fighting with your spouse. Or maybe it's 45 minutes of a miserable commute. Or even 45 minutes just mindlessly watching TV you don't enjoy.
45 minutes. Seems innocuous enough.
Then he multiplies it out. Over a year, that's 240 hours, which, he points out, is 6 full 40-hour work weeks.
And the implication hangs in the air. My God, look at all that wasted productivity. Look at all that wasted time.
The source calls this a non sequitur that's designed for conclusion control.
It's capitalist time management applied directly to the human soul. It forces you to quantify your life. You start viewing your own existence as a spreadsheet. Am I properly optimizing my 45-minute evening slot?
Instead of asking
the real questions, why do I have to commute for 45 minutes to a job I hate? Or why is my primary relationship so drained that we fight every single night? Or even, why isn't it okay to just stare at a wall for 45 minutes if I want to?
Right. The solution Peterson offers isn't to change the conditions, it's to optimize the time within the bad conditions. Listen to an audiobook during the commute. Develop a better argument strategy. Make the time productive.
Exactly. Level up while you're stuck in the traffic jam. It's what the source calls blocking rebellion via daily arithmetic. If you're busy calculating the percentages of your own efficiency, you are not questioning the fundamental architecture of your life. You're just trying to be a more efficient inmate.
It stops you from realizing that those 240 hours are being stolen from you by the design of society, not by your own personal lack of discipline.
But if you accept as math, you accept the blame. Oh, I wasted 240 hours. No, you didn't. The system extracted them. But Peterson brilliantly reframes that extraction as a personal failure of time management.
And then the solution he offers to get some of that control back is the most famous Petersonism of all. It's the meme.
Here it comes.
Clean. You're after him.
The classic. The one that started it all.
Specifically in this conversation with Marcus, he talks about organizing the bathroom cabinet. He says if you do that, it will yield a 3% increase in daily joy.
3%. They really love these specific numbers. It makes it all sound so scientific and measurable.
Our source document identifies this tactic as a material tether.
It creates small wins to reinforce the prison architecture. Look, there is a legitimate Jungian insight being weaponized here. Jung said there's no real distinction between your inner self and your outer experience. So if your room is a mess, your mind is a mess.
That feels true, though. I have to push back a little here. When I clean my office, I do feel better. When I organize my desk, I feel clearer. Is the source really saying we should all just live in filth?
Not at all. And that's why the trap works so well, because it does feel better. It gives you a little hit of dopamine. It gives you a tangible sense of agency. I can't control the global economy. I can't control the political situation, but I can control the location of these socks.
So what is the actual problem, though?
The problem is the scale. The source argues that this hyper-focus on the micro distracts you from the fact that the house itself, society, is on fire. It's what the analysis calls civilized busy work. It is a profoundly anti-anarcho-primitivist realization.
What do you mean by anti-primitivist?
Imagine you are a passenger on the Titanic. The ship has hit the iceberg. The alarms are ringing. And Jordan Peterson walks up to you and says, you know, if you go down to the dining hall and organize the silverware by size, you'll feel a 3% increase in joy.
And he's not wrong, is he? You probably would feel a momentary sense of control and accomplishment.
You would. You feel great. Look at how neatly these forks are aligned. Meanwhile, the freezing water of the North Atlantic is rising past your ankles. That is the clean your room trap. It focuses your precious agency on the trivial to prevent you from seeing the catastrophic. It keeps you docile. A person who is obsessively organizing their sock drawer is not a person who is organizing a revolution.
It prevents the realization that maybe the real problem is that we shouldn't be on this sinking ship at all.
Exactly. It validates the ship by making you the curator of its silverware.
Nice ship you have here. Very organized. So, okay, we've painted a picture of a very complete and frankly very depressing trap. We've got the guilt from Solzhenitsyn making us look inward. We've got the myths from Disney keeping us in the lamp. We've got the math making us optimize our slavery. And we've got the cleaning giving us a false sense of control over the silverware on the Titanic.
It's a complete ecosystem, a containment system.
So how do we get out? The source material provides a heretical exit strategy. And this is the part I really want to dig into because it offers 5 specific lenses to break this entire spell.
This is segment 5, the breakout. But before we get to those big philosophical lenses, there is one very practical piece of advice that Peterson gives that the source attacks directly.
Strategic truth.
Yes. Peterson specifically advises against carelessly quitting a job.
Right. He says, don't just walk out in a huff. That's impulsive. That's the donkey behavior from Pleasure Island. He promotes strategic truth-telling, using minimal force, planning your exit carefully.
Which sounds completely rational. Don't be rash. Be a responsible adult. But our source exposes this as a delay mechanism.
How is being prudent a delay mechanism? That seems counterintuitive.
Because impulsive truth breaks the simulation. When you just snap and say, no, I am done, this is fake, and you walk out the door, that creates a glitch in the matrix. It's raw, it's real, it disrupts the pattern for everyone. But strategic truth, that's a negotiation.
You're negotiating the terms of your release with the prison warden.
Exactly. I'll leave, but I'll give you 2 weeks' notice, and I'll train my replacement, and I'll make sure I have 6 months of savings in my account. By the time you've done all that strategy, the system has had time to recalibrate. It has reabsorbed your rebellion. The initial pure impulse to flee is gone. You've been cooled down. You've been domesticated again.
It allows the system to adapt to your rebellion and minimize the damage.
It neuters the rebellion. It turns a potential riot into a well-managed transition plan.
Okay, so that's the behavioral trap to watch out for. Now let's look at the philosophical keys. The source lists 5 liberating lenses. These are entire systems of thought that can fracture the Peterson-Marcus narrative. We need to go through these carefully because some of these terms might be new to people.
Let's do it. Let's break the chains.
First on the list, Gnosticism. Now, this is an ancient one, right?
Very ancient. It was a major branch of early Christian mysticism. The absolute core idea is that the material world, this world of pain, struggle, decay, and eating, was not created by the true, ultimate God. It was created by a lesser, flawed, and often malevolent deity called the demiurge.
So the world is basically a mistake, or a prison.
A prison is the better word for it. So when Peterson comes along and says, take responsibility for the world, bear its burdens, the Gnostic just laughs and says, why? I didn't build this prison. My job isn't to fix the plumbing in the prison. My job is to escape it.
So from a Gnostic perspective, Peterson's responsibility is seen as what?
It's seen as demiurgic recycling. You are basically a volunteer employee of the false god, the warden. Working harder just strengthens the illusion and reinforces the prison walls. The goal isn't to be a responsible prisoner. The goal is to wake up to your true divine nature and leave the factory. It completely invalidates the whole concept of the noble burden. The burden isn't noble, it's just heavy.
Okay, powerful. Second lens, Advaita Vedanta. This comes from Eastern philosophy from India.
Specifically, it's a school of Hindu non-dualism. Very influential.
Can you give us the explain it like I'm 5 version of this one?
The simplest version is this. There is no you. The separate self, the ego, the personality you think of as me, is an illusion. There is only the one undivided consciousness of the universe, which they call Brahman. The separation between me, you, and the listener is an illusion, which is called Maya.
So how does that critique the Peterson model?
Peterson is absolutely obsessed with the self, building the self, perfecting the self, rescuing the self. The Vedantic perspective looks at this and it just smiles. It says, what self are you talking about? You are already the entire ocean. Why are you spending all your energy trying to be a better, more responsible wave?
It sees the entire struggle for meaning as just chasing a ghost.
Exactly. Peterson is teaching you how to meticulously polish a mask. Advaita Vedanta says, just take the mask off. There is no one there to improve. You are already whole and complete. The work isn't to build, it's to realize.
Third lens, anarcho-primitivism. We touched on this with the Titanic and cleaning your room.
This is the view that civilization itself is the fundamental problem. It argues that for 99% of human history, we lived as hunter-gatherers in nomadic tribes, in nature, without jobs, without mortgages, and without the kind of neuroses that Peterson is trying to sell you a cure for.
And presumably without neatly organized bathroom cabinets.
Exactly. Nature is messy. Forests are gloriously messy. The obsession with order, with straight lines, with geometry, with cleaning, is a symptom of a domesticated, caged mind. This view sees the 240 hours of math as civilized busy work. It's designed to distract you from your own natural instincts. We aren't meant to have careers and build legacies. We are meant to live, eat, love, and die. Peterson is training you to be a good zoo animal. Anarcho-primitivism says, break the glass.
Number 4 is Stoicism. But wait a minute, Peterson talks about the Stoics all the time. He seems to admire them.
He talks about what you could call capitalist stoicism, grind-set stoicism. Endure pain so you can be more productive. Suffer better so you can win.
So what is real Stoicism, according to this critique?
The source points to the core concept of apatheia. No, that doesn't mean apathy like I don't care. It means untroubledness. It means being radically indifferent to things that are outside of your direct control.
How is that different from what Peterson is saying?
Peterson wants you to care deeply about the outcome. He wants you to believe you can save the world by cleaning your room. He wants you to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. Real Stoicism says, the world does what it does. I will be virtuous and align with reason, but the outcome is not up to me. It rejects the need for Peterson's grand, dramatic meaning. You don't need to be a hero on a hero's journey. You can just be. The struggle is unnecessary.
And that brings us to the 5th and final lens, which I have to admit is my personal favorite from the list, chaos magic.
This is the most modern and, you could argue, the most fun and the most dangerous to the old systems. Chaos magic views belief itself as a tool, not as a truth.
So the idea that nothing is objectively true.
Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Chaos magic views Peterson's truisms, like his foundational idea that you must struggle to have value. As sigils or spells, they are programs that he is trying to install in your mental operating system.
Though if they are just programs, you can uninstall them.
You can hack them. You can rewrite the code. You can simply say, actually, that rule doesn't serve me. I choose to have value without struggle. I choose to manifest joy without suffering.
Peterson would say that's impossible. He would call that unearned wisdom or childish fantasy.
Peterson says that because he is operating inside the struggle program, he thinks it's the whole operating system. Chaos magic says, watch me. It views these so-called laws of reality as hackable paradigms. Peterson presents them as being like gravity unavoidable and fundamental. Chaos magic reveals they're more like software completely rewritable if you have the nerve.
So taking all 5 of these heretical lenses together, what is the final verdict from the source material? What is the escape protocol?
The protocol is 3 simple but very difficult steps. First, refuse lures.
Refuse the bait. Don't bite the hook.
Stop biting the hook of meaning when it's offered by the system. Stop accepting the premise that you are fundamentally broken and need to be fixed by heroic labor.
Okay. Second step.
Burn cycle.
What does that mean?
Stop repeating the same self-improvement loops over and over. Stop sitting on your bed asking, what foolish thing am I doing? And start standing up and asking, what is the system doing to me? Break the endless pattern of self-blame and self-correction.
And a third and final step.
Affirm sovereignty.
Which means what exactly?
Realize that you are not a broken thing that needs resolution via iterative responsibility. That is a delay tactic designed to keep you busy until you die. You are already whole. You are the genie. And it's time to smash the lamp.
It's a powerful shift in perspective. It moves you from being the perpetual student to being the architect of your own reality.
It moves you from the inmate trying to earn parole to the free being who realizes the gate was unlocked the entire time.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. Now that you've seen how the responsibility, meaning perpetual self-correction loop, might function as a containment system, what is the one noble burden or heroic duty you've been carrying that you're suddenly willing to question or even set down this week?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.
Thank you for joining us.